Dealing with anxiety can seem really challenging. All that overthinking can be really exhausting, and if you're one of the people who experience panic symptoms, it can be really scary. I know what it's like. I'm here to offer you some direction so you don't feel lost when you're trying to manage your anxiety. Hey everyone, this is Harry Chediar. Today we're talking about anxiety. For some of us, the experience of anxiety is on the lower end. The symptoms aren't as intense and people can be quite functional. And for others, it can be in between or on the higher end of the spectrum. That's when people start to experience panic symptoms and it really affects their day-to-day life. And that's when it gets really scary. Feeling anxious is just another way of saying that you're feeling really worried. Now, for some people, when they're feeling anxious, sure, they might be thinking about the problem and they may feel like they're worried, but they can snap out of that and come back into their present reality. Whereas people who are feeling really anxious and it's more intense, they can really get caught up with that thinking treadmill. And all the what ifs just seem to keep making it worse. What if this happens? What if that happens? And then you get sucked into this thinking treadmill where you get one thought after another, which can start to feel mentally and emotionally exhausting. And they start to feel like they're living in the state of fear. When you're dealing with anxiety, it can be really stressful. And over time, what happens is you start to feel more irritated and you start to become angry with people around you. And when this happens, some people turn to alcohol or marijuana or some other drug as a way to just shut off their thinking. I can understand why some people choose alcohol or some other drug, because honestly, all that thinking just takes a toll on you. When the anxiety builds up, you can start to have some physical symptoms. And if it's one of the first times in your life that you're starting to experience anxiety symptoms, it can be really scary. You might also feel really lost and helpless because you don't know where that anxiety is coming from and what's actually going on in your body. I will never forget the first time that I experienced a panic attack in my life. I was in grade 10 and I had come home for lunch from school. My parents weren't there at that time. I was just watching TV, and all of a sudden I could feel my chest getting tighter and tighter and tighter, to the point where I started to feel like I couldn't breathe anymore. It was really scary. I didn't know what to do. I was just on the side of the couch trying to figure out if I should be calling the ambulance or if I'm actually going to die from this. Over the years, the more I learned about the human mind, the more empowered I felt. I was no longer scared of anxiety because I started to learn how to respond to it. You see, when you experience anxiety symptoms, especially if it's one of your first times, you can start to have what I call anxiety on top of anxiety. So let me explain. Initially, you might actually be experiencing anxiety for some other reason in your life. Maybe it's family problems, maybe you're worried about school or finances or your marriage, whatever it is. But it might have been building up underneath. But because you haven't actually worked with managing that original anxiety, these symptoms start to show up in your body. And when you're experiencing those symptoms, you start to feel anxious about the symptoms. You start to feel worried that something is happening within your body, and that's the anxiety on top of anxiety. So how do you work with this? You start with the first layer, the worry that you feel about the physical symptoms of the initial anxiety. I want you to start by reassuring yourself that you're gonna be okay. Even though it's really scary when your chest gets tight or you're feeling really sweaty and you can't sleep, whatever symptoms you're experiencing, remind yourself that you're gonna be okay. There are ways to deal with this. The first step is getting to know where your anxiety symptoms show up in your body. For some people, it's in their chest. And for others, it might be in their shoulders, their hands might be shaking, and for some people, it's in their stomach. So pay attention, start to notice where some of these sensations are coming in your body. If you don't want to experience anxiety on top of anxiety, try and respond to some of these sensations in a way that's actually helpful. You want to reassure yourself that you're going to be okay and that you're just feeling really worried and scared right now. That's why some of these symptoms are coming up. It doesn't mean there's anything wrong with you. Now, one of the common things that people experience when they're feeling anxious is that they start to get caught up with their thoughts. This becomes a habit, and your mind immediately goes to that place where it starts to trigger all of these thoughts. It's sort of like a river that's gone down the same pathway many times, and it's the least resistant path. Well, in your brain, because you might have done it so many times, your mind just quickly goes to that way of processing. And if you want to really change that, what you want to do is try and find a way to ground yourself. When it comes to grounding strategies, the point really is to just bring yourself to the present moment. That being the case, you just want to find a grounding strategy that really fits for you. For some people, paying attention to their breathing works, and for other people, it doesn't. For some people, it might be more visual. You might want to look at a picture or something in the room, some image. Or for some people, it's their auditory. Like if they're hearing the sounds in the room, they can really bring themselves to the present moment. Try and experiment with these different grounding strategies and see which really works effectively for you so that you can step off of that thinking treadmill. Your feelings are like your inner compass. If you're feeling anxious, there's probably a good reason why you're feeling anxious. The more you learn to tune into your anxiety, the more you'll understand what's actually making you feel worried. When you become more aware of some of the anxiety symptoms that you experience, and you're able to bring yourself to the present moment by grounding yourself, then you're much more likely to take a different approach rather than get caught up in your thinking treadmill. You're going to be able to comfort yourself by doing something that is comforting for you. Maybe it's listening to music or taking a walk or talking to a friend. Whatever brings you back down to your baseline so that you're not feeling as anxious anymore. At that point, you're much more likely to be able to tune into your feelings and actually understand what's worrying you. At some point, you'll need to start tackling that, because if you don't address what's actually worrying you, this anxiety will still be lingering. Every situation is unique. Although these strategies are going to be helpful, if you're finding that your anxiety is quite intense, I highly recommend that you check in with your family doctor and a therapist so that you can find ways to manage your anxiety. I'm still fairly new when it comes to creating YouTube videos. If you have any feedback or any questions, please leave them in the comment section down below. I would love to hear from you. And if you're new to this channel, remember to hit that subscribe button and the bell icon so you get notified as I release new videos.